Hi all, Terry Fox here from Legally Bound, and today we're going to talk about two major federal lawsuits that will change the way homes are sold. Specifically, how should real estate agents get paid for their services? Now, on the screen you're going to see a chart, it's a pie chart, and it essentially shows what we're going to be talking about. You'll see that we've assumed there's a $500,000 sale price, and or at least seller's proceeds then would be $470 because we have to deduct the 6% commissions. So this basically shows that in a $500,000 sale, if there were 6% commissions, 3% is going to go to the buyer, 3% is going to go to the seller's agents. And the important thing here for today is the seller pays them both. For example, if the sales price is $500,000, the usual percentage of 6% will be paid to the seller's broker from the seller's proceeds at closing. In this case, $30,000. And then a part of that, usually half, would be given to the buyer's agent. We'll get into the benefits of such practice, but that percentage of sale price commission is what is being challenged as unfair to sellers in these lawsuits. One of those trials ended yesterday with a $1.8 billion verdict against the defendant real estate brokerages. The lawsuit was brought by the Burnett's and 8 other named individuals and a class of 250,000 other sellers who listed properties on one of the 4 multiple listing services that paid buyers' commissions out of sellers' proceeds. The defendants were the National Association of Realtors and the largest national real estate broker franchisors, Realogy, Home Services of America, BHH, HSF affiliates, RE/MAX, and Keller Williams. Together, it is claimed that they conspired to require home sellers to pay the broker representing the buyer of their homes and to pay the inflated amount in violation of federal antitrust law, the Missouri Merchandising Practices Act, and Missouri antitrust laws. The complaint accused the defendants of agreeing, combining, and conspiring to impose and enforce an anti-competitive restraint that requires home sellers to pay the broker representing the buyer of their homes and to pay an inflated amount in violation of federal antitrust law and in violation of Missouri law. Indeed, the Antitrust Division of the United States Department of Justice is currently and actively investigating practices in residential real estate brokerage marketplace with an apparent focus on compensation and other conduct and practices. The plaintiffs argued that if the NAR rules governing commissions were not in place, then the cost of buyer-broker commissions would be paid by their clients, the home buyers, and buyer brokers would then have to compete with one another to offer a lower commission rate. Plaintiffs claimed that the rule restrains price competition among buyer brokers because the person who actually retains the buyer broker, the home buyer, does not negotiate or pay the commission for his or her broker. So the rule is argued to be illegal because it requires sellers to pay overcharges for services provided by buyer's brokers to the buyer, who is the seller's adversary in the transaction. It raises and fixes and maintains buyer-broker compensation at levels that would not exist in a competitive marketplace, and it encourages and facilitates steering and other actions that impede the innovation and entry by new and lower-cost real estate brokerages. So my take on this situation is that basically, one, buyers don't want to pay their agents' commissions. They want the seller to pay. And 2, sellers agree to pay buyers' agents a commission because if the buyer's agents aren't guaranteed payment, they won't show the property. And if it doesn't show, it won't get sold. Bottom line is that the plaintiffs want the NAR and other defendant brokers and approximately 600 listing services that have this rule to abolish it and allow sellers to refuse to pay buyer agent commissions. And the plaintiffs, of course, want the brokers to return all the money paid to the buyer brokers. How much money are we talking about? Well, the Burnett case that finished yesterday ended up with a $1.8 billion judgment against NAR and the other brokers. Now, let's explore the benefits of the current paradigm that the NAR and other brokerages have been using. Well, there are several good arguments that the current system provides sellers and buyers with the most efficient methods of finding and transacting business. Under the current paradigm, all agents and the general public have access to the available inventory through the various listing databases. Buyers' agents can perform complex searches of hundreds of listing services based on what their hopeful buyers want in a home and zero in on the properties to show them. Then, if there's a closing, buyer receives a portion of the commissions that seller pays to the seller. In this model, buyers who are looking for a new home don't have to worry about paying an agent. They just need to concentrate on paying for the home at closing. Sellers can have confidence that real estate agents will show their home to prospective buyers because they have the promise of a commission if they actually do go to closing. Well, how does the U.S. model of commission payments compare with other countries? According to the executive director of the Consumer Federation of America, total commission rates in other countries are basically between 1% and 4%. Whereas, of course, in the United States, the average total commission rates continue to remain between 5% and 6%. And that hasn't changed for more than 20 years, even though there have been significant advances in technology making it easier to list and find properties. In fact, in 2015, the NAR commissioned a report to study negative emerging trends in the real estate industry. And they, of course, found that in countries like the United Kingdom, Singapore, Netherlands, Australia, Belgium, those commission rates were essentially between 1% and 3%. So agents in the U.S. are paid far more than agents in the rest of the world. So even though there was a $1.8 billion award, two of the defendants actually settled. One company called Anywhere settled for $83.5 million and agreed to change their practices. And then also Remax settled for $55 million and also promised to no longer force sellers to pay buyers' commissions. Considering that the judgment after a trial was $1.8 billion, settling was a massive win for Anywhere and Remax. Now, while the plaintiffs in Burnett have prevailed in their lawsuit, there will be years of appeals, so it's not over yet. And even though the Department of Justice is looking into the situation and wondering if they're going to bring antitrust actions, we don't know if that's going to happen yet either. But what will happen now? And will sellers really refuse to pay buyer commissions? A listing broker would still offer that arrangement to a seller. Perhaps some sellers will forego that arrangement. But does that make sense if you want buyers' agents to show your home? It might not, because buyers' agents are not going to work for free. So unless the buyer promises to pay them, they don't really have any incentive to show homes where there's no promise to the buyer's agent. It's also a fact that the general public has access to several home listing sites, and they can directly contact the listing agent and purchase the home without representation. The next question is whether or not there will continue to be buyer's agents at all. And if so, what would their business model look like? Well, they could, on the one hand, offer buyer agent services for free and consider it a loss leader to hopefully get a listing when that buyer becomes a seller. Or they could offer a flat fee or an hourly rate. They could constrict their efforts towards listing and selling properties and give up the idea of being a buyer's agent. And of course, they might be able to lobby Congress to change the lending laws so that commissions could be paid out of a mortgage loan. What if there are no more buyer's agents? In that case, the seller's agents will continue to list the properties on the listing services and work with unrepresented buyers. Will the number of agents be reduced? Well, according to estimates from the Association of Real Estate Licensed Law Officials, there are more than 3 million people holding active real estate licenses in the United States. Less than half of those are full-time agents. I estimate that if the rule is deemed unlawful and no seller can offer to pay a buyer's commissions, the number of buyer's agents would be cut by at least 1 million. The remaining would essentially have to convert to being more of the listing agents. Now, what other alternatives are there for buyers? Well, buyers could also consider hiring attorneys to represent them, which has added values that can't be offered by agents since agents cannot practice law. And many legal services can be offered by an attorney not otherwise allowed for agents. What are the alternatives for sellers? Well, there are for sale by owner sites. There are a number of sites that sellers can directly place their homes up for sale. One benefit for them is that they don't have to pay commissions to any agents. So, who are the winners and the losers of these lawsuits? Well, in the RE/MAX settlement, there were 250,000 plaintiffs. Attorneys get around 25% of the 55 million, which is like 13 million or so. And each plaintiff will get $160. The buyer's brokers and agents will have to change their business models because they can't make any money if nobody wants to pay them. It's a fair prediction to say buyer's brokers will have to transition to a pure seller's agent listing role. Attorneys may see an increase in assisting buyers, which I think is fantastic. I know that I can help buyers draft contracts that protect them, and I only charge by the hour, so there's no tie to the sales price. For a transaction where these brokers were getting $30,000, my fees are probably less than $5,000. So, I predict that sellers will no longer be forced to pay a buyer agent commission. The judge presiding over the Burnett case will have to decide the scope of this injunction that he's going to draft, see if maybe there are minor tweaks to the system that they have or major ones. But it will take time. We will see what they do. Then there's going to be the second trial. We'll see what that judge does. Bottom line is, if you are buying or selling a home, things could change about the way your brokers are paid. But you should definitely consider hiring an attorney to monitor everything, to help with drafting contracts, because essentially we can do things that agents can't. So if you are in the market, please consider calling us so we can help you. Thanks.